That was the sound.
It's the pick. I wrote Sonny Came Home with. No.
that'd be a really long-lived pick. Yeah. So I'm here, if you can't already tell, with the great John Leventhal, and if you couldn't tell from what he was playing with this beautiful mandolin, it was the introduction to Sonny Came Home, which you told me actually didn't come as the original intro for the song. This was, of course, a huge hit for you and Shawn Colvin, and released in mid-90s. Was it 90, 95?
97, 98.
97, 98. And man, I mean, it was just ubiquitous. It was everywhere. You guys won a Grammy for this.
Yeah, it was amazing, yeah.
And I can't wait to go through some of the songs from a few small repairs, but I think we have to start with this song as being sort of the biggest hit off that record. So tell me about, firstly, the session for Sonny Came Home. There's a lot of guitars on it. There's an amazing electric guitar tone, amazing acoustic guitar tone. How did it come together? Tell us about the session. I want to know everything.
The best that I can remember, and this generally is the case, on that record, there may be one or two exceptions, where I had I had mapped it out pretty well. I have at that point, this was sort of a game changer for me when ADATs came along, right? So you could sort of record releasable audio, in your own space. I think they were relatively new, if not like brand new. So I think I had made a pretty good specific demo of it. I doubt I had all the pieces, but I had, I'd written the song on the acoustic guitar and I had the line, I had all that, had the chord changes. And my memory of the track it was with the great and sadly late Michael Rhodes on bass. Michael was an incredibly, really unique bass player, incredibly fluid, but at the same time, very locked in, very supportive. My kind of bass player, where there were always a little bit of surprise elements to his bass parts at the exact right moment, which all my favorite bass players had. Jamerson, McCartney, Rick Danko, basically my triptych of great bass players. And the great Sean Pelton, who I've collaborated with a lot over the years, was playing drums, and I just played acoustic guitar, and we just cut it like that as a trio. And then basically, what I probably got is a relatively decent rough vocal from Shawn, but we didn't have the lyrics yet. She had a completely different set of lyrics. And I can't say we knew it was a hit, but there was something in the back of our minds where we knew we should probably pay attention to this song and get it right. So, I probably overdubbed one or two things at Sear Sound, which is where we cut it. And then I took it back home and I probably worked on the electric guitar part. And then I definitively worked on the mandolin intro. Because when it started taking shape, I just felt like, God, it just feels like it needs something to lead into it. And, I mentioned to you that it wasn't really the mandolin that I came up with first. It was, I had this old violin with dead strings and I didn't know how to play it. The song's in B minor. And I just started going, as though I had a slide, although I was using my fingers, I was just going. I was just looking for a little rhythmic loop.
It was kind of going underneath the mandolin.
Well, I didn't even have the mandolin yet.
Okay.
I thought I would just do this, and then break into song. Da-da-da-da. I said, no, it needs a little something.
Yeah.
And I just, what? So if you look in the space I'm working in, I keep instruments all the way around. So I just sort of randomly grabbed the mandolin.
Yeah.
And came up with that line.
The rest was history.
I guess so. I mean, I had zero idea at the time. Honestly, I had no idea it was going to be a hit.
Well, it was actually sampled quite a bit too, like in hip hop music and stuff like that.
Yeah, for a minute, it seems like it was getting sampled.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
All right. So on the same record with a changed guitar, we have Get Out of This House. Now, since we've changed guitar, is this the guitar that was used, or what guitar was used? If not this one?
A weird one. And the only reason I remember what it was is when you forced me to go back and relearn this stuff, I found a clip of us playing it on Letterman show, and I was using the exact rig I used. It was weird. It was the Epiphone version of a Melody Maker, but I had put in a humbucker pickup in the bridge position. Because back then I didn't have any money. I didn't have that many guitars, so I was sort of I was improvising in a lot of ways to try to get sounds. But that was a cool guitar, and it had what I do remember, to make this tune work, I put 12s with a wound third on it. And I cranked it through an AC30, and that's what I used. I no longer have that guitar. Lord knows where that one is.
And was it Epiphone like the kind of like import version, or
no? It was mid 60s.
Okay,
some Gibson made
Yeah.
Epiphone.
Yeah.
Construction was essentially what an SG is, I guess, or a Melody Maker, something like that. That kind of vibe.
And the tuning is unique for that.
Yeah, so this will lead us into this conversation, because it seems like I get asked about this probably more than anything else, because I do quite a bit of writing, quite a bit of performing, and even when I'm, playing on people's records, I'll put my guitar in a tuning. Everybody has a different name for it. I just call it C tuning, which is basically low to high, C, G, and then the rest of the strings are normal. And it gives you a lot of, for me, it gives a lot of great opportunities for slightly out of the ordinary voicings and parts. Obviously, embedded in this is a G tuning, so it's your classic Stones kind of thing. But for me, it's really Ry Cooder. Like, Ry Cooder has been a big influence on me. I think the world of him as an artist, and goes way beyond, for me, his guitar playing. I think he's really quite brilliant. His sense of syncopation, his musicality. There's a lot about Ry that has inspired me. I've tried to not use this tuning to sound like Ry. I've tried to just find my own voice on it. But I really started using it a lot on this record. And a lot of what it enabled me to do was sort of get these voicings that didn't sound like you had heard them before. Like... Right? And it also gives you incredible opportunities on the low 3 strings to have these wide voicings.
Sounds incredible.
Right. And I use it probably more on acoustic guitar than electric guitar. Anyway, that's how I wrote this song. So I had this. Basically, the whole song is this vibe here. It's like, 3, 4. When I had that, I remember being pretty excited, like, oh, this is going to be a really good rockin' tune. It's kind of like the Stones, but it's not really like the Stones. And I knew it'd be great for Shawn, and she liked it. And then it took us a while. We had to actually, like, Sonny Came Home, the melody of the tune was implied in the demo.
Right.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. This we sort of worked on getting a cool melody that worked over these chord changes. Anyway, the bottom line is we wrote the song. It was a great, exciting track. This I did cut live with that guitar, and we cut it once again as a trio. Shawn singing, we got pretty good vocal, and then I just worked on some of the production elements of it. One thing that's interesting about it, if you listen to the intro, so it's not all sort of power chord guitar. So I tried to double it with an acoustic guitar, and that sounded too nice to me. But I doubled it. If you listen to the intro, which we can if you'd like, I doubled it with, I just mic'd like a hollow body electric. So it sounded kind of thin, but you still heard the sense of an acoustic-y thing going on. Right?
Was it the Lauderdale 335?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that guitar. There's a Harmony Meteor over there, but it was like a Harmony Meteor. It was actually a weird Teisco hollow body. The two together, I thought, and I went back and listened to it, and I thought, oh yeah, that's still kind of a cool sound. I like
You
that
need
sound.
this guy?
I don't.
Oh, you just play it like this.
Yeah, I'm talking about I didn't plug it in.
So I want to bookend the conversation about Shawn Colvin by going backwards to the first record that you did together that released in 1989 called Steady On.
Correct.
It has some really amazing guitar tones on it, very unique guitar tones. Also won a Grammy. So your first two projects together were Grammy worthy. Is that correct? Because it was Steady On.
Well, Steady On was actually the first record I produced, so lucky me. And I wasn't really guided by wanting to be a record producer.
But you got a home run on your first at bat.
Well, it was kind of exciting, I gotta say. Yeah. And I'm glad you like that track, Steady On, because that is actually my favorite thing on that record.
Yeah.
That was when I first thought I had found something that felt original to me.
Yeah. So what was that like guitar sound that's on it?
Well, it's funny. I listen to that record now and I can go like, you had no idea. I had no idea how to get a guitar sound then. So I was dependent on engineers. And for the first few records, I started engineering my own records about 10 years in. I was always slightly frustrated with like how to get the sounds that I was hearing. You know, I couldn't quite say like, you know what, use this pre, use this mic, use this compressor, roll out a little 200, I didn't quite have that together. Eventually I got it together. What I had at the time, I didn't have many instruments. I didn't have any money, so I didn't have any instruments. I had a Telecaster, which I still have, a Strat, which I no longer have. The Strat had EMG pickups in it, which at the time were a thing because they were quiet and it was the 80s and this, that, and the other thing. And I had like a really bad acoustic guitar. So actually, if there was an acoustic guitar that I played at that point, it was Shawn's. But what the first vintage guitar I ever bought as an odd one was a Fender 6. You know, their long scale 6-string bass. I was always in love with that sound. I came across it inadvertently and I was like, whoa, what is that? And I really wanted one. And so this track, Steady On, was the first sort of fruition where I figured out a way to use it that was kind of like a tic-tac bass, but it wasn't because the context wasn't what a tic-tac bass would have normally done in pop music. The writing came mostly from the rhythmic stance and not from sort of the folky guitar stance. Like I heard the groove in my head, you know, boom, boom. I just heard this groove. And
because there's a really interesting sort of rhythmic thing going on
there is. I should probably, let me grab an acoustic guitar and then I can sort of say, and then, you know, so I had this 6-string bass and this track Steady On was the first time I felt like I had used it or utilized it in a way that I felt for me was sort of fresh and sort of me. Like it felt like I wasn't trying to copy anybody, that it found like a little voice that worked. You know, I had this groove and I had, you know, this kind of, once again, these, as you can tell, at least at that point, I was very fond of what I would call, you know, open seconds or tenths, right? Like that sound. Slightly unresolved chords, you know, and I had, you know, so I had this kind of like bouncy, slightly Celtic-y melody, you know, and then whatever. A B section. Steady on. had that, and I had programmed this drum machine thing, but it sounded too normal to do it on the acoustic guitar. And that's when I just thought, I'll just play a synth bass, and I'll double the synth bass with a 6-string bass, which I can grab as well.
Yeah,
we can hear that sound.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
All right. And it was a great sound, I thought. Then this bridge part. I don't think I played those chords there, but it goes from, and then that's all it's doing. And then in the middle of the song, there's actually a breakdown, which maybe we'll play the track, but I got a little 6-string bass solo where it goes, stuff like that. So I'm playing like kind of soul guitar fills in the middle of the song, but on Fender 6-string bass with flat wound strings, which even without even trying to get a sound on it, it sounds kind of cool to me, right?
Well, I want to complete our Shawn Colvin portion of the interview, and I want to move on to something that you did not too many years after you completed Steady On and won your Grammy, which is another Grammy-winning song which you worked on with the great Marc Cohn.
Oh, okay.
And the song Walking in Memphis, of course, his biggest hit. How did you get involved with Marc Cohn? How did you get involved with that song? Tell us the story behind that.
There is a bit of a story. So interesting thing is I had made, this Steady On, Marc Cohn's first record, and then I made a record with Jim Lauderdale in there for Warner Brothers. And it was all in a very condensed period, like 2.5 years. So my first 2.5 years were kind of busy. But I had made, there was a demo I had made, as I understand it. There was a demo of some of the songs from Shawn Colvin's first record was on a cassette and had been floating around. And somehow Marc Cohn had heard it. And on the demo is a lot of me playing shakers, hand drums, like I would play drums and I would use a compressor to make the backbeat kind of thing, and use little kick drum samples I had, and some drum machine programming. And he really liked that. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I was primarily a guitar player, a bass player kind of guy. And he had spent, I don't know how much time, he had spent quite a bit of time on his first record trying to cut the tracks and was really unhappy with it. Did not come up with anything that he liked. And so he decided to try it again. I think they had done a lot of it in LA. He decided to try it again in New York. And he called me and he said, well, I'm cutting these tunes. And, I really like your drum programming. Can you come up and, I want to try some of your drum programming with these tunes. I said, yeah, but, man, I really play guitar and bass. That's like really what my thing is. And he said, well, okay, bring the guitar and bass. So I took over, basically. And that's how that happened. And he had already tried to cut Memphis a few times, and then when I got involved, we had cut it. When you asked me about this, I had to even call him. I said, "Man, refresh my memory here. Didn't we try to cut this with Steve Gadd?" And he went, "Yeah." Didn't we try to cut this with Manu Katché? Do you remember Manu Katché played on So? And he goes, "Yeah." I said, well, I had a friend, his name was Denny McDermott. I had been doing some club gigs with him. I said, let's get Denny in. And my memory is basically, I said, look, the drums just need to be really simple. We just need to get out of your way. and we cut it with Denny, and we got it. I mean, in some ways, I think my biggest contribution to that track is probably suggesting the quarter note cross stick and my bass part, because I put a slight syncopation into the bass part. And also there's a 6 minor in the chorus that Marc to this day doesn't play. If you listen to the track, when I go to the 6 minor in the chorus on the bass, I should get a guitar. He doesn't go to the 6 minor. He still can't do it. But basically, you know, like I said, to this day, Marc, like, so the chorus goes, walking in Memphis. That chord change, he doesn't play. He still doesn't play it.
Because he didn't agree with it, or he didn't
No,
like
he
it?
he's just never bothered to learn it.
Yeah.
It's his classic. It's actually endearing.
So when you heard it, though, in its, I mean, like, when he heard it in his final rendition, was he like, we got it? Or like, was he still unsure?
I can't remember. I wish we could call him up now and ask him what he thought. It would actually be fun. Let's call him.
Yeah, we call him. We call him.
Hey, buddy.
Hey. So, you know, I'm in the middle of this interview, and we're discussing Walking in Memphis and the recording of it. And I was telling the interviewer, right here, his name is Mason.
Hi, Marc.
How it was. I was telling him sort of the elliptical way that I got involved, because you thought I was a drum programmer, and that you and I had cut it at least twice before we got the final one, and I suspect you had cut it at least once, if not more, before that, right?
Dozens.
Right. And I said to him, I said, but you know, it was the only time in my entire recording history where I knew the song was a hit. And he said, did Marc think it was a hit? And I honestly have no idea. Did you know it was a hit? Did you allow yourself to think that?
No, I didn't. Mostly because I wrote that song in 85. I didn't get signed until 89. Came out in 91. I didn't even have a record deal. So the idea of having quote unquote a hit didn't really, I didn't dial that in. What I knew was that it was a better song than I'd written up to that point. I'd sort of turned a corner as a songwriter. But in terms of thinking it was a hit, no, I had no idea.
Interesting. But my basic feeling was like there was a kind of unspoken energy in the air, even from Atlantic, that it was a hit. Like, don't screw this up.
Right. Well, I remember we were having so much trouble getting a good recording of it.
Yeah.
At one point, I thought, let's just do the piano, put the piano vocal demo on there.
Yeah.
And the A&R guy at the time was like, no, we need a band on this.
All right.
But you're right. A few people there thought it was a hit. Although there were enough people in Atlantic that also thought it would only go over in Memphis.
A local hit. Yeah. Nobody in Cleveland's going to care about a song about Memphis. It's true.
Right.
I hadn't thought about it from their perspective. Yeah. Well, we're done with you now. Thanks. Back to me.
Thank you, Marc.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, buddy.
All right. Bye.
Bye, Mason.
Bye. Thank you.
There you go. That's Americana.
Yeah.
This bit, the churchy bit. I think I play, you know. I think I'm out.
Well, thank you for your work on that. Thank you for your contribution to that. And thank you again to Marc for being willing to chime in here via telephone to set the record straight about his feelings of the possible prowess of the song and its likelihood to be a hit. I want to move on to some of the stuff that you've done more recently in the last few decades with the great William Bell in Memphis. Do we need to change guitars for this before we start getting into William Bell?
What song are we going to do?
I think let's start with The Three of Me.
Yeah, we need to change guitars.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I could play it on any guitar.
But if you have the guitar.
Yeah, but on this record, I still have everything. I know what I use.
Okay.
Because we cut it here.
Yeah.
This is where I cut William's record.
All right, so we'll transition and then come back to William Bell and The Three of Me.
All right.
So we're back. New guitar, Gibson L5. This was what was used on William Bell's record. But if somebody is not familiar with William Bell, could you just sort of outline for us briefly sort of his importance in sort of the R&B sound, his importance to music generally, and this is also a record that you won a Grammy for with him for this work and these songs. So could you just give us a quick overview if you could?
William co-wrote one of the greatest blues songs of all times. It's so great that people don't even realize it was written by Booker T and William, which is Born Under a Bad Sign. Mm-hmm. So he wrote that. He wrote, You Don't Miss Your Water Till Your Well Runs Dry. He wrote Everybody Loves a Winner, which is an incredibly beautiful song. Linda Ronstadt had a small hit with it. A lot of his songs have been covered. My personal favorite, which is a song called I Forgot to Be Your Lover. Like William, unlike Otis or Wilson Pickett, didn't quite get to top 40 pop radio in the 60s and 70s, but he was huge on, R&B charts and soul charts. And he was great. And his voice was and still is totally intact.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting for me to write songs with him and try to swim in that tradition and try to do what I hope I did, which is to have the songs and the record be resonant of all that, but not obviously trying to copy any particular thing that happened. That to me is the trick.
Yeah.
And I feel like we did a relatively good job. I'm really proud of the record. I really like the record a lot.
Yeah.
I'm happy it won a Grammy and it got great reviews. Unfortunately, I've discovered that hardly anybody knows about it, though, because of the nature of the music business. It's not like a big pop record or anything. So.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about it until you had, in sort of our pre-interview, we had talked about it, and I've been listening to it, and it's absolutely amazing. The guitar playing is awesome.
Thanks.
The songs are great.
Thanks.
And just like there's such a story, like there's so much implied in like the tone of his voice. Like it's like somebody who's lived, for a lot of years and has there's a wisdom in the tone of the voice in a way that it's sort of indescribable.
I'm so glad you said that. And that was the one sort of non-musical insight I had. I said, I knew immediately to myself, it's like, well, the lyrics have to be substantial and they have to be from the stance of somebody who's lived. It can't be your standard soul lyrics like, oh, baby this, or like, I'm going to meet you here. And, no, it had to be about somebody who had lived, so you felt it. Line, horns come in. So that's it.
Can we, along the lines of William Bell, transition to another one of the great songs that you played on that record?
Sure.
Which, it's all the things you can't remember.
Yeah.
Things,
Let's do that. Let me grab another guitar because this doesn't quite work for that. Although it could, I suppose. It, so that was another case of really just trying to get a very specific cool little hook part that was in that tradition that we're talking about.
But this is exactly what you'd hear on sort of the people that you outline, whether you're talking about a Curtis Mayfield or anything like that. There's always these cool like guitar hooks that just kind of are revolving, and absolutely beautiful. This Telly too is amazing. Can you tell us about like what is this Telly? It's got the Strat neck, but the Telly body.
Yeah, I've actually owned this for a long time. It's like I said, I didn't have any money in the beginning. So in the mid 70s, I had a yellow Telecaster and I had this 66 Strat that ultimately I put EMGs in. No longer have that. But then I don't know how many of your listeners are going to be New York savvy when 48th Street was sort of the center of, guitar culture in New York City. In the 70s, there was tons of stores, and then there were starting to be vintage guitar stores that sold just used guitars. One of them was called We Buy. It was run by kind of a cranky old man, and he sat behind a plexi wall, so you couldn't like go in and like touch the guitars. Like you had to ask for which guitar, and then you'd hand it out. It was crazy. But I didn't have any money, and anyway, they had this thing, and somebody had done this, like a Strat to it. It was like a 68 Telecaster somebody had stripped, had a rosewood neck, which I still have, and I said, I kind of like that, and it's good to have a second Telecaster, why not? And then I noticed I wasn't using it that much, and I was like, I don't know, something about this neck. And then, long story short, I had this Strat neck. I just put it on there, and it became a much better guitar, and that was kind of an aha moment for me, that because I love Telecasters so much, sort of this synergy, the chemistry between the neck and the body is so much of where it's at. Yes, the pickups, yes, the hardware, but the innate chemistry of the sound of the guitar. You can swap necks and bodies and you'd be shocked at how different the guitars become.
Yeah, well, I want to transition into sort of the final pieces of our interview today, musical pieces, which is a record that you are just going to release.
Yeah, in fact, I think it was just announced today. I don't know when you'll air this, but January 26, 2024.
Yeah, so it'll probably be right around the time that this comes out, I presume.
Yeah, my first solo record after... I hate to say it, but I just turned 70, so I waited till I was 70 to make a solo record. The bottom line is I always wrote songs, and at some point I realized that perhaps like the best move I could make was to not necessarily follow your classic session player path and try to be the master of all things, but to sort of embrace my limitations, to embrace the kind of eccentricities of the things I had.
Yeah.
And to combine that with the songwriting. So here we are in my studio in my brownstone in New York City, and the pandemic started, and it was almost like the universe had basically conspired to say, hey, if you're ever going to do it, now's the time to do it. So I just basically tried to harvest this kind of weird, eclectic group of things that I wrote. Some of them solo guitar, some of them more produced. There's a few vocal tunes on there. A tune I wrote with Matt Berninger from The National, a tune I wrote with my incredible wife, a tune I wrote with Marc Cohn. Solo guitar pieces. There are some things on there. I've always had a great love for orchestral music. So there's a lot of stuff like that. Anyway, so this was like the second thing I wrote. I seem to have always had an affinity for hymns, like particularly Anglican hymns. There's just something about it. It's like Celtic thing. As I say, you know, a great hymn can, you know, look sorrow right in the eye, but still leave you with a great sense of hope, which is, I think in a lot of ways, once again, not to get too highfalutin, is what I think I'm always trying to do that in a way. Yeah.
There is a certain poetry to your playing. So,
so anyway, let's see if I can get through it.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks, man.
Wow.
A couple of clamps in there, but the feeling was there. Anyway, there's that. Hymn number 2.
Hymn number 2.
Which is out on all your streaming services as of today. Actually.
Yes, and we will have everything as far as... there's been a great playlist that's been made of a lot of the work that John has done from the great Zach Childs over at True Tone. And he's compiled almost all of your credits into one playlist. So I will link that for anybody who's interested. But we will also have, of course, all of the new stuff as well. So if you're interested in checking that, that'll be available in the description.
That's so cool, man. I also hear that the record company put up like a playlist of a bunch of stuff that I've done, not only productions but songs that I've written for other people, and you know, tracks that I played on, like a Bruce Hornsby track I played on, a Jackson Browne track I played on, Tedeschi Trucks track I played on, you know, stuff like that. So I think there's going to be some stuff out there. I hope.
Well, we can definitely make sure we include all that. But I want to hear, if you're willing, another song to give us a little taste of what's to come, what we can expect. Is there something else you have in mind that might be a good illustration?
Well, yeah, I'd like it. Not to get all this. It sounds like everything on the record is going to be somber, but there's this Aaron Copland piece that I sort of transposed to twang guitar, which I like quite a bit.
Masterful.
Aaron Copland. Well,
Man.
it's for me, it's a discipline to hold that far back, and it's not about your rock, pop, folk cliches. You have to honor the melody, and
But the tones are there, man. It's really, really, it's the arrangement is really beautiful. That's
Thanks,
the way
man.
you create it. Yeah, it's outstanding. Man, that
Thank
was
you.
amazing.
Thanks.
Well, and I'm really looking forward to this being out there.
I'm thrilled that it's getting out there and that you're talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's not all sad songs either.
Yeah.
There's some really good rockin' tracks on there too.
Yeah,
So,
it's really fantastic. I've gotten an advanced copy, and I've been able to listen to it, and it's really fantastic. And I think guitar players and just consumers of music alike, there will be something in there for everybody. And I'm again just really just so honored that you would allow us to kind of have a peek behind the curtain at what's coming, as well as taking us through memory lane for many of us with the works of Shawn Colvin, Marc Cohn, and then of course the great William Bell and your own music.
Thanks, man.
So thank you, John, so much for just your contribution to music, and I think making the world a better place through some great melodies, some great guitar tones. But we're not through yet, because I have a few things that I want to show you, some photos from the past.
Lord help us.
And I want you to explain the things that are going on in those photos, if you'd be willing, as our way to close out our interview
Sure,
today.
why not? We've gone this far. How much more embarrassing could it get?
So first photo that I want to show you is you and Shawn Colvin, as it appears, getting your Grammys.
Yeah.
Tell me about that night when you were you expecting that your names would be called? Did you think you had a shot?
No, absolutely not. Well, I don't know. The famous thing about that night was Old Dirty Bastard from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right.
Got up in front of one of the awards. I forget. We won 2 awards. I think we won Record of the Year and Song of the Year. He got up in front of one of them. He whacked out on some drug and just was, if it wasn't so entertaining, I would have been really pissed off. Like, hey, man, this is our award, But people seem to I remember that. I don't really remember much about the evening, to be honest.
You don't remember, and the award goes to.
I mean, I remember we were backstage and it was exciting, but I got to tell you, the whole Sonny Came Home thing, man. Well, I was thrilled. It was amazing to get in your car, and pretty much in New York, you turn on a radio station, it was playing the song. I was like, needless to say, it was helpful to our bank account.
Yeah.
Helped buy this place.
Yeah.
I never had the expectation it was gonna kind of had the impact it was going to have. I really did.
I think you were also up against Paula Cole, had a really huge record.
No, but I think my memory is it was I Believe I Can Fly was the song everybody.
R. Kelly.
Yeah, everybody thought was going to, before he kind of went down the dark way.
Right.
I think that was something everybody assumed was going to win. How we won, I'm sure there are theories. I have no idea. I'm just happy we won. And it was it was exciting night, what can I tell you, man? It was apparently it was like the most played record of that year, the most spins across the different formats.
You still have your Grammy, I presume?
Yeah, we have. Believe it or not, we have a room upstairs. Our laundry room has all our Grammys, so I have 7, and I think Rose has 3 or 4.
All right, so here's another one that I want to show you, and this one looks like it goes back quite a ways back. It's got some heavy hitters here in the photo. Tell us where this photo's taken, what's going on here.
That was Cohn's second record, and that was Quad Studios, which I don't know if it's still there. That's the other thing, is that so many of the studios I came up in and learned in aren't there anymore. Although Sear Sound is still there. I don't know if you have a picture of that. That was at Quad, where we cut pretty much all of that record. God, look how young I was. Here's a nice thing I remember about that. Crosby, who Mark and I then became friendly with.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deal for us. I really loved the Byrds. The Byrds in Buffalo Springfield. When I was 14, 15, 16, I just thought they were the coolest. And then Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young, et cetera, et cetera. I really loved that. particularly Deja Vu. I love that record. David was one of the first, if not the first guy from outside of my world who went out of his way to express affirmation and support to the records. He loved Colvin's first record,
Mm-hmm.
and he loved Cohn's first record.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Cohn's second record, which is pretty close on the heels of the first one. Like things were moving quickly.
Yep.
So I want to say it's 93 or something like that.
Okay.
And you know, he was always like, hey, if you need me and Graham to sing on a record. And we were like, oh, okay. And then it was like, well, yeah, why not? Let's see if they'll come and sing. So they sang harmony parts on at least one song, if not two songs.
Wow.
It was a good day. And then Mark and I went out and produced a track for David around the same time.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then here's the last one that I'm going to show you, which has got you with the Tedeschi Trucks Band.
Oh, yeah.
And you got a telly, of course, as one would expect. And then also your wife is there on stage.
Yeah, she's looking like, what the hell? We're probably jamming, and she's like, what am I supposed to do?
They didn't have the decency to hand her a tambourine.
Yeah. You know, man, I think that was around times I worked with them on a couple of records. You know, I co-wrote with them and played on one of them or both of them. I can't remember. Went down there. I have a huge admiration for both Derek and Susan. I think they're extraordinary, and I think the way they've handled their career and the autonomy that they've created, super impressive.
Yeah.
I think that's at the Beacon. So maybe they were playing. They said, "Hey, come up, sit in with us." And, we were just trying to stay with them.
John, that was some really extraordinary playing, and I'm really excited to see this record out here in the world. Hopefully it is either already released or soon to be released at the time that this video comes out. And I'm very grateful for your tasty guitar playing, whether it's a few small repairs or steady on, or any of the stuff that you've done with Marc Cohn, and even involving Marc Cohn briefly in the interview. We are very grateful for all of that. So just thank you for everything that you've done. We greatly appreciate it. I think I speak for everybody watching this when I say that. And I'm just so grateful that you were willing to accept us into your studio here in New York and have us being able to talk to you about these things. It's a real honor.
Man, I'm flattered that you guys came all this way. Nico, the cameraman. Hi, Nico, back there. It's been kind of a crazy day for reasons we've talked about, but it's happy to do it, man.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Yeah, really am. So let's go get some good food. That's what I say.
Before we do, would you be willing to play one of those just great off the cuff John Leventhal guitar pieces just to close this out, so we can fade this out too?
Sure. Why don't I play another sad song? Well, you know, I said I love these hymns, so I could just do these all day.